I think, it said slowly, that we have much more to learn about humans than we realize. The council meeting ended very differently than it had begun. When it started, the alien delegates had felt comfortable, safe. They had been studying human history like scientists studying ancient fossils. Interesting, they thought. Educational, but safely in the past. Now they left the chamber in silence. Each one was deep in thought. Each one was seeing humans in a new way. The polite human ambassadors, the quiet human workers, the friendly human traders. Were they all warriors in disguise? Were they all playing games that the aliens could not see? Jinnu watched them go. He was still standing in the middle of the chamber, his wrench in his back pocket, grease on his hands. Ambassador Yuna stood beside him. "Well," she said quietly. "That was unexpected." "Sorry," Jinnu said. "I did not mean to cause trouble. I just could not stay quiet when he said we had been domesticated." Yuna laughed. It was a real laugh, not the polite diplomatic sound she made in meetings. "No, do not apologize. What you said was true. And maybe it was time someone said it clearly." "They look scared," Jinnu observed. "They should be," Yuna said. "Not because humans are dangerous to them, but because they have been underestimating us. In the galactic community, information is power. The species that understands others has an advantage. For decades, other species thought they understood humans. Now they realized they did not understand us at all." Jinnu nodded slowly. He had not thought about it that way. VKKA, the historian, had not left with the others. He stood near the holographic projector, his forearms folded, his compound eyes fixed on the two humans. "May I ask you something?" he said. Jin, you shrugged. "Sure. Why did you tell us this?" Vecca asked. "If deception is such an important human strategy, why did you reveal your methods? Is this not giving away an advantage?" It was a good question. Jinnu thought about it carefully. "Maybe," he admitted. "But here's the thing. Even if you know what we are doing, that does not mean you can stop us. Knowing that humans use flanking maneuvers does not help you if you cannot see the flanking maneuver coming. Knowing that we appear weak when we are strong does not help you if you cannot tell when we are pretending." Vecca made a clicking sound that might have been frustration. "Besides," Jinnu continued, "I am just a plumber. I am not telling state secrets. Any human could have told you what I said. Most of us learn this stuff when we are children. It is not hidden knowledge. It is just how we live. That is what makes it remarkable," Vecca said. "Among most species, strategic thinking is reserved for leaders and commanders. Among humans, even your workers think like warriors. We'd call it common sense," Jinnu said with a smile. Vecca stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he uncrossed his arms. "I must revise my lecture," he said. "Everything I said about humans being peaceful and evolved was wrong. You have not abandoned your warrior nature. You have simply hidden it so well that we could not see it." "Do not feel bad," Yuna said. "Most species make the same mistake. They see our smiles and think we are harmless. They see our cooperation and think we have no teeth. They only discover the truth when they find themselves outmaneuvered. Has this happened before?" Vecca asked. Yuna smiled her diplomatic smile. It was polite, warm, and completely unreadable. "I could not possibly comment," she said. Jin laughed. The three of them stood in silence for a moment. Then Vecca did something unexpected. He extended one of his forearms toward Jinnu in a gesture that humans used as a greeting. "Thank you," he said. "You have taught me more about humans in 10 minutes than I learned in 50 years of study." Jinnu shook the offered hand carefully. The chitin was hard and cool against his palm. "Just doing my job," he said. "Well, not really. Fixing pipes is my job. This was just Talking. Sometimes talking is more important than fixing pipes, Vecca said. He released Jinu's hand and turned toward the door. He paused before leaving. I wonder, he said, how many other species are secretly warriors like humans? Perhaps we historians have been fooled more times than we realize. Then he was gone, his 6 legs clicking softly on the metal floor. Yuna and Jinu were alone in the empty council chamber. You should get back to work, Yuna said. I should prepare for the questions. I am going to receive from about 50 different species who all want to know if what you said was true. Sorry again. Jinu said. Stop apologizing, Yuna replied. You did good. Sometimes the truth needs to come from unexpected places. A diplomat saying these things would sound like propaganda. A plumber saying them sounds real. Jinu nodded. He walked toward the hole in the floor where he had climbed up. Before he dropped down into the maintenance tunnel, he looked back at Yuna. Can I ask you something? He said. Yes? All that stuff I said about humans using ancient tactics in modern life. Is it really that surprising to the aliens? Do they really not do the same thing? Yuna considered the question carefully. Some do, she said. Some species are strategic. Some understand competition. But most galactic species evolved in environments with abundant resources. They did not need to fight to survive. They did not develop the same instincts that humans did. So we are special? Jinu asked. We are different, Yuna corrected. Humans evolved on a planet with limited resources and dangerous conditions. We had to compete to survive. We had to fight and scheme and outmaneuver each other. That history is written in our DNA. It is part of who we are. She paused. Most species in the galaxy have never faced that kind of pressure. They are smart. They are advanced. But they do not think like warriors. They do not see the world as a battlefield where every interaction is a potential contest. And humans do, Jinu said. Yes, Yuna agreed. We do. Even the nicest, gentlest human still has a part of their brain that is constantly evaluating. Who is the threat? Who is the ally? What is the best move? We cannot turn it off. It is automatic. Jinu thought about this. He thought about his own life. Even now, standing here talking to the ambassador, a small part of his mind was analyzing the situation. What did she want? What was her angle? How could he benefit from this connection? He was not doing it consciously. It was just how his brain worked. I guess the aliens are right to be worried, he said. Maybe, Yuna said. But like you told them, we are not interested in conquering the galaxy. We have enough challenges competing with each other. Other species are not our enemies. They are our customers, our partners, our neighbors. Unless they try to take something from us, Jinu added. Yuna's smile sharpened slightly. Unless they try to take something from us, she agreed. Jinu dropped down into the maintenance tunnel. He landed softly and picked up his toolbox. Above him, Yuna was a silhouette against the light of the council chamber. Hey, she called down. What is your company called? Kim's Plumbing and Maintenance, he replied. Why? The diplomatic quarter is having some pipe issues. I will recommend you. Jinu grinned. Thanks, Ambassador. Call me Yuna, she said. And thank you for reminding everyone what humans are really made of. She walked away, and Jinu was alone in the darkness of the tunnel. He sat there for a moment, thinking. The aliens had thought humans were tame, domesticated. They had thought the fire in the human spirit had gone out. They were wrong. The fire was still there. It burned in every human, from the highest diplomat to the lowest maintenance worker. It was the fire of competition, of survival, of the endless drive to overcome challenges and beat opponents. Humans had not abandoned their warrior nature. They had just learned to hide it. They had learned to fight in new ways, on new battlefields, with new weapons, and the galaxy was only just beginning to understand. Jinu picked up his wrench and started crawling toward his next job. Somewhere in Section 7, a pipe was still leaking. That was his battle for today. Small, simple, unimportant in the grand scheme of things, but he would win it anyway, because that is what humans did. They won. The council chamber felt different now. The air seemed heavier. The lights seemed brighter. Every alien in the room was focused on the human plumber standing in the middle of the floor, grease-stained and sweating, holding a wrench like it was the most natural thing in the world. Vecca was the first to speak. You claim that humans still use ancient warfare tactics in their daily lives. This is a strong claim. Can you provide specific examples? Jinu nodded slowly. He thought about where to begin. There were so many examples. Every day of his life was filled with small battles and tiny victories. But he needed to explain it in a way that aliens could understand. Let me tell you about last week, he said. My company was trying to win a contract to maintain the water systems in the eastern section of this station. It is a big contract, worth a lot of money. Good for business. Go on, Vecca said. There were 3 companies competing. Mine, a Thornid company, and a Mallory company. He nodded toward the Mallory delegate, whose color had shifted to a nervous gray. The Thornid company was the biggest. They had the most workers, the best equipment, the strongest reputation. So they won? Asked the Binari. No, Jinu said. We won. Let me explain how. He began to walk slowly around the chamber as he talked. The aliens turned in their seats to follow him. The Thornid company made a strong bid. High-quality work at a fair price. The Mallory company made a similar bid. Both companies presented themselves directly. They showed their strength. They showed their experience. They expected to win because they were bigger and better. That seems logical, the Krill delegate said. It is logical, Jinu agreed. But logic is not always enough. My boss, a woman named Hannah, studied the situation carefully. She noticed something interesting. The station administrator who would choose the winning company was a Krill, and Krill value efficiency above all else. The Krill delegate nodded. This was true. So Hannah changed our approach. Instead of showing our strength, we showed our efficiency. We made a bid that was lower than the others. Not because we were desperate, but because we had found ways to do the same work with fewer resources. We had made deals with suppliers. We had optimized our processes. We had planned everything down to the smallest detail. That is clever, Vecca admitted. But it is not warfare. Wait, Jinu said. There is more. The Thornid company saw our low bid and thought we were weak. They thought we were foolish. They told the administrator that we could not possibly do the work at that price. They said we would fail and leave the eastern section without proper maintenance. What did you do? Asked the Mallory delegate. Hannah had prepared for this. She had collected data from our previous jobs. She showed the administrator exactly how we had succeeded on similar projects. She showed numbers. She showed results. She proved that our efficiency was real, not fake. Jinu stopped walking. He was standing directly in front of Vecca now. The Thornid company had attacked us, he said. They had tried to destroy our reputation. But their attack failed because we had prepared a defense. We had anticipated their move. Sun Tzu wrote that if you know your enemy and know yourself, you will not be in danger in 100 battles. Hannah knew our competitors. She knew what they would do. She was ready. The chamber was silent. We won the contract, Jinu finished. The Thornid company was shocked. They did not understand how a small human company had beaten them. But we understood. We had used strategy. We had used deception. We had appeared weak when we were actually strong. Ambassador Yuna spoke up. "Tell him about the other thing," she said. "The thing with the rival company and the 3 neighborhoods." Jinnu glanced at her. She was leaning forward in her chair, her eyes bright with interest. She was no longer hiding behind her diplomatic mask. "Right," Jinnu said. "That was even more fun." He turned back to address the whole council. A few months ago, a new plumbing company started operating on the station. They were aggressive. They were undercutting everyone's prices. They were stealing customers by promising cheaper service. "That sounds like normal business competition," Vecca said. "It is," Jinnu agreed. But this company was not playing fair. They were cutting corners, using cheap parts that would break quickly, doing fast jobs that looked good but would cause problems later. They were building a bad reputation for all plumbers on the station. "What did you do?" the Banari asked. Its small black eyes were wide with curiosity. "We could not fight them directly," Jinnu explained. "If we lowered our prices to match theirs, we would lose money. If we complained about them, we would look jealous. So we used a different approach." He held up his wrench again, turning it in the light. "Do you remember the tactic called the flanking maneuver?" he asked. "When you do not attack the enemy directly, but go around them and strike from the side?" Vecca nodded slowly. "We did something similar." The cheap company was focusing on the main commercial areas of the station. That is where the money is. That is where everyone was competing. "So we stopped competing there. You gave up?" the Krill asked. "No. We went somewhere else. We focused on the residential areas, the living quarters, the places where families live. These areas do not pay as well, but they have something more valuable: relationships." Jinnu smiled. "We got to know the residents. We fixed their problems quickly and fairly. We remembered their names. When their children had birthdays, we sent small gifts. When holidays came, we wished them well. We became part of their community." "That is unusual behavior for a business," Vecca said. "Maybe for you," Jinnu replied. "Not for humans. Humans are social creatures. We build connections. We form groups. We take care of each other. This is not just kindness. It is strategy." "Explain," the Krill demanded. "Simple. The residents in the 3 neighborhoods we served started talking about us. They told their friends. They told their coworkers. They recommended us to people in the commercial areas. When businesses needed plumbing work, they did not call the cheap company. They called the company that their employees trusted. They called us." He looked around the chamber. Within 6 months, the cheap company had lost most of their customers. Not because we attacked them directly, not because we complained about them, but because we built something they could not compete with. Trust, loyalty, reputation. We flanked them. We came at them from a direction they were not watching. And by the time they realized what was happening, it was too late." The Mallory delegate flashed a deep purple color that Jinnu did not recognize. Its translator spoke. "This is remarkable. You describe business tactics, but they sound exactly like military strategies." "Because they are the same thing," Jinnu said. "Humans never stopped fighting. We just changed the battlefield. Instead of fighting over land, we fight over markets. Instead of killing enemies, we bankrupt competitors. Instead of conquering territories, we win contracts." "But surely," Vecca said, "this is just business. It is not truly warfare." Jinnu shook his head. "What is warfare? It is competition for resources. It is using strategy to overcome opponents. It is winning and losing, surviving and failing. Business is all of those things. Politics is all of those things. Even personal relationships have elements of strategy and competition." He pointed at the holographic projector, now dark and silent. Every tactic you showed today is still in use. The flanking maneuver, the ambush, the feigned retreat, the pincer movement, the guerrilla tactics. Humans use them all, every single day, in 1,000 different ways. Ambassador Yuna stood up from her chair. She walked to stand beside Jinu. The historian was not wrong about one thing, she said. Her voice was calm and clear. Humans have evolved, but we did not evolve beyond competition. We evolved to hide it better. We learned to fight without looking like we are fighting. We learned to compete without seeming aggressive. We learned to win while smiling and shaking hands. She looked at Jinu, then at the council. This plumber understood something that I have spent years trying to explain diplomatically, she said. Humans are still warriors. We have just become very, very good at wearing disguises. The council chamber was completely silent. Every alien was staring at the two humans, the polished ambassador and the dirty plumber, standing side by side. Vecca's compound eyes seemed to click and shift as he processed this information. This is concerning, he finally said. Jinu shrugged. It is just who we are, he said. We are not going to apologize for it. And we are not going to change. He tucked his wrench back into his pocket. But look, we are not dangerous. Not to you. We are not here to conquer the galaxy. We just want to do our jobs, make our money, take care of our families. The same as everyone else. But you use these tactics, the Krill said. These deceptive, manipulative tactics. Sure, Jinu admitted. But we use them on each other. Humans compete with humans. That is our nature. We are not going to suddenly start trying to take over your planets or steal your resources. We have enough trouble competing with each other. Ambassador Yuna nodded. What he says is true. Human competition is mostly internal. We save our most intense battles for each other. Against other species, we prefer trade and cooperation. Mostly, Jinu added with a small grin. Yuna gave him a sharp look, but there was amusement in her eyes. The council members looked at each other. There was a long silence as they processed everything they had heard. Finally, the Binari spoke. The council meeting should have ended. Jinu should have crawled away through the maintenance tunnels and gone back to his regular work. That was the plan. That was what a smart person would have done. But Vecca, the insect historian, had one more thing to say. Before we finish, Vecca announced, I would like to address a common misunderstanding about humans. Jinu paused. He was halfway to the exit, but curiosity made him stop. He turned around and crawled back toward the grating beneath the council chamber. Many species believe that humans are still dangerous, Vecca continued. They look at human history and see endless violence. They see the wars, the conquests, the revolutions, and they worry that humans might bring this violence to the galactic community. There were sounds of agreement from several delegates. The Krill made a low humming noise. The Mallory flashed yellow, which Jinu had learned meant concern or worry. But I want to assure everyone, Vecca said, that these fears are unfounded. Humans have changed. They have evolved. The aggressive instincts that drove their ancestors have been softened by contact with other species. The competitive nature that once made them fight has been redirected into peaceful activities. Jinu raised an eyebrow. He was lying directly beneath the grating now, looking up at the underside of the council chamber floor. Modern humans, Vecca continued, are cooperative. They are gentle. They follow rules. The warriors of their past have become the diplomats and traitors of their present. Ambassador Yuna here is a perfect example. Calm, peaceful, logical. There is nothing left of the primitive human in her. Jinu glanced toward where he knew Yuna was sitting. He could not see her face through the grating, but he could imagine her expression. Calm, neutral, revealing nothing. Smart woman, Genu thought. Very smart. In fact, Vecca said, and his voice took on a tone of amusement, if you want to see how much humans have changed, look at their workers on this station. We have human maintenance staff, human cleaners, human technicians. They are quiet. They are obedient. They do their jobs without complaint. They have accepted their place in the galactic order. Genu felt his jaw tighten. The fire that once burned in the human spirit has gone out, Vecca declared. They have become domesticated, tame. They are no longer the warriors of their history books. They are simply workers. Several aliens laughed. It was a sound of relief, of reassurance. The scary humans were not scary anymore. They had been broken. They had been made safe. And that was when Genu laughed. He did not mean to. It just came out. The idea was so ridiculous, so completely wrong, that he could not help himself. A short, sharp bark of laughter that echoed through the metal tunnels above him. Silence fell. What was that? Asked the Benari delegate, its voice high and nervous. It came from below, said the Krill, from the maintenance level. There was a long pause. Genu held his breath. Maybe they would ignore it. Maybe they would think it was just a strange noise from the pipes. Is someone down there? Vecca called out. His compound eyes were probably scanning the floor, trying to see through the metal grating. Jinu closed his eyes. He could stay silent. He could crawl away. He could pretend nothing had happened, but something inside him refused to do that. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was the spirit of his grandfather, who had always told him to stand up straight and never be ashamed of who he was. Yeah, Genu called back. Someone is down here. He pushed himself up and moved toward a larger grating panel nearby. With practiced hands, he unlatched it from below and pushed it open. Then he climbed up, emerging from the floor of the council chamber, like a miner coming out of a hole. 12 pairs of alien eyes stared at him. Jinu stood there in his dirty work uniform. His hands were stained with grease. His tool belt hung heavy around his waist. A wrench stuck out of his back pocket. He was sweating from the heat of the maintenance tunnels. He looked nothing like the polished diplomats and scholars around him. Who are you? Vecca demanded. His forearms were folded across his chest in a gesture of displeasure. Name is Genu, he replied. I am a plumber. I work for the maintenance company that services this section of the station. You were listening to our private meeting, the Krill delegate said. It was not a question. Odd not to, Genu said. Sound carries through these tunnels. I was fixing a pipe right below you. Ambassador Yuna had turned in her seat to look at him. Her face was still neutral, but Genu thought he saw a small spark of interest in her eyes. Or maybe a warning. He was not sure which. Why did you laugh? Vecca asked. What was so amusing? Genu hesitated. He should apologize. He should say it was nothing. He should bow his head and go back to his work like a good, quiet, domesticated human, but his grandfather's voice was in his head. Never be ashamed. You said the fire in the human spirit has gone out, Genu said. You said we have been domesticated, tamed. And this is funny to you? Vecca's compound eyes seemed to glitter with annoyance. Yeah, Genu said. It is pretty funny. Because it is not true. Not even a little bit. A ripple of tension moved through the chamber. The Mallory turned a deep shade of orange, which meant alarm. The Benari pressed back in its chair, as if trying to get away from him. Vecca stepped closer. He was much taller than Genu. His copper-colored plates caught the light. Explain, he said. Jinu took a breath. He looked around the chamber at all the alien faces watching him. He thought about what his grandmother would say. She would tell him to be polite but honest. She would tell him to speak clearly and simply. She would tell him that the truth was not something to hide from. All those tactics you showed, Jinnu said. The flanking, the ambush, the deception, the guerrilla warfare. You think they are old history. You think humans do not use them anymore. Humans have evolved beyond such methods, Vecca said firmly. You have joined galactic civilization. You follow galactic laws. Sure, Jinnu agreed. We follow the laws. But that does not mean we stopped competing. That does not mean we stopped fighting. Fighting? The Krill delegate leaned forward. Are you saying humans still engage in warfare? Not warfare like you mean it, Jinnu said. We do not shoot at each other anymore. Well, mostly not. But we fight every day. We fight for contracts. We fight for customers. We fight for position and influence and respect. He pulled the wrench from his back pocket and held it up. I am a plumber, he said. That is about as far from a soldier as you can get, right? I fix pipes. I unclog drains. I make sure the water flows where it needs to go. What is your point? Vecca asked. My point, Jinnu said, is that yesterday I used one of those tactics you showed. The one about appearing weak when you were strong. My company was competing against a bigger company for a contract. We looked small and weak. We made a low bid. They thought we were desperate. They did not see the trap. The chamber was silent. We won the contract, Jinnu continued. We outmaneuvered them. We used strategy. We used deception. We did exactly what that Sun Tzu guy wrote about 2,000 years ago. Ambassador Yuna had her hand over her mouth. Jinnu could not tell if she was trying not to laugh or trying not to scream. That is business, Vecca said. That is not warfare. Is it not? Jinnu asked. The tactics are the same. The thinking is the same. The goal is the same. Beat your opponent. Win the prize. Survive and grow stronger. He looked around the chamber, meeting alien eyes one by one. You think the fire in the human spirit has gone out, he said. But you are wrong. The fire is still there. We just learned to hide it better. We learned to dress it up in suits and contracts and polite words. But underneath all that, we are the same people who crossed mountains with elephants and fought with sticks and stones. Vecca stared at him for a long moment. Interesting, the historian finally said. Most interesting. Jinnu shrugged. I should get back to work. Sorry for interrupting your meeting. He turned toward the hole in the floor. But before he could climb down, Ambassador Yuna spoke. Wait, she said. Her voice was calm, but there was something underneath it. Something sharp. Please stay. I think the council would benefit from hearing more. Jinnu hesitated. He looked at Yuna. She gave him a small nod. The other delegates were whispering among themselves. The mood in the chamber had changed. The comfortable certainty was gone. In its place was something else. Curiosity, uncertainty, and perhaps a little fear. Good, Jinnu thought. Maybe now they will start to pay attention. He stepped away from the hole and stood straight, his wrench still in his hand. Okay, he said. What do you want to know? Jinnu was not supposed to be listening to the council meeting. He was supposed to be fixing a leak in Section 7, but the leak had led him here, to the maintenance tunnels directly beneath the Great Council chamber. And once he heard what they were talking about, he could not make himself leave. He was 28 years old, born on a space station orbiting Mars. His parents had been workers in the mining industry. His grandfather had been a soldier. His grandmother had been a teacher. Jinnu had chosen to become a plumber because it paid well and because he liked working with his hands. There was something satisfying about fixing things, about taking something broken and making it work again. He had been working on the Galactic Archive Station for 3 years now. It was good work. The aliens paid humans well because humans were willing to do jobs that other species considered beneath them: cleaning, maintenance, repairs. The aliens had robots for some of this work. But robots could not solve problems the way humans could. Robots follow programs. Humans thought. Jinnu lay on his back in a narrow tunnel, his toolbox beside him. Above his head, thin metal grating separated him from the council chamber floor. If he looked up through the holes in the grating, he could see the underside of the alien chairs. He could hear every word of the lecture. The insect historian was talking about something called the Art of War. Jinnu knew this book. His grandfather had made him read it when he was 12 years old. This text was written by a human named Sun Tzu, Vecca was saying. It is over 2,500 years old. It contains advice on how to conduct warfare. Much of it seems obvious to modern minds, but at the time, it was considered brilliant. The hologram projector hummed, and Jinnu imagined ancient Chinese characters floating in the air above. Sun Tzu wrote that all warfare is based on deception, Vecca continued. He taught that a commander should appear weak when strong, and strong when weak. He should pretend to be far when near, and near when far. Jinnu smiled in the darkness of the tunnel. He thought about last week, when his company had been competing for a big contract to maintain the station's water recycling systems. There were two other companies bidding for the same contract. One was run by a Thornid. The other was run by a group of OLARI. The Thornid company was bigger. They had more workers. They had better equipment. On paper, they should have won easily. But Jinnu's boss, a woman named Hana, was clever. Very clever. She had made their company look small and weak. She had submitted a bid that seemed too low to be profitable. The Thornid company had laughed. They thought the humans were desperate. They thought the humans would lose money and go out of business. What they did not know was that Hannah had made a deal with a supplier on the other side of the station. She had secured cheaper parts and materials. The bid that looked unprofitable was actually perfectly profitable. The Thornid company did not find out until it was too late. By then, the contract was signed. Sun Tzu would have approved. Above him, the lecture continued. Another human tactician was named Hannibal Barca, Vecca said. He was famous for his use of the double envelopment, which I showed earlier. But he was also known for his use of unexpected approaches. The hologram changed. Mountains appeared, covered in snow. When Hannibal wanted to attack his enemies, the Romans, he faced a problem. The Romans expected him to come by sea or through the easy coastal routes. These paths were guarded. So Hannibal did something no one expected. He took his entire army, including large animals called elephants, over the mountains. The crossing was brutal. Many soldiers died. Many elephants died. But when Hannibal emerged on the other side, the Romans were completely surprised. They had not prepared for an attack from that direction. Jinnu thought about this. He thought about how, 2 months ago, he had been trying to fix a blockage in one of the station's main water pipes. The blockage was in a section that was very hard to reach. The normal approach would have taken days of work, removing panels and cutting through walls. Instead, Jinnu had found another way. He had crawled through an old ventilation shaft that everyone had forgotten about. It took him directly to the blockage. He fixed the problem in 4 hours. His supervisor, a krill named Tovik, had been amazed. "How did you know about that shaft?" Tovik had asked. You had shrugged. "I looked at the old station blueprints." Everyone looks at the new ones. Nobody looks at the old ones. Tovik had stared at him with those strange gray eyes. "That is unusual thinking," he had said. You had not mentioned that his grandmother had taught him to always look for the path nobody else was watching. She had learned it from his grandfather. His grandfather had learned it in the military, Some lessons never got old. The historian above was now talking about something called guerrilla warfare. This is a type of fighting used by smaller, weaker forces against larger, stronger ones, Vecca explained. Instead of meeting the enemy in open battle, guerrilla fighters hide among the regular population. They strike quickly and then disappear. They attack supply lines. They destroy communication systems. They make the stronger force waste time and resources hunting shadows. One of the alien delegates spoke. Jinu recognized the voice as belonging to the Binari, the small furry creatures. This seems cowardly, the Binari said. Why not fight directly? Because they would lose, Vecca answered. Guerrilla tactics are used by those who cannot win through conventional means. It is a strategy of the desperate. Jinu bit his lip to keep from laughing out loud. He thought about the ongoing competition between his plumbing company and the Thornid company. Even after losing the big contract, the Thornids had not given up. They were bigger. They had more resources. If they had competed directly, they would have crushed Jinu's company. So Hannah did not compete directly. Instead, she had their workers make friends with the station's residents. While the Thornid workers did their jobs and left, Jinu and his co-workers stayed to chat. They learned names. They remembered birthdays. They brought small gifts during holidays. When station residents needed plumbing work, they did not call the big Thornid company. They called the friendly humans who remembered their names. It was not a direct attack. It was not a big dramatic victory. But slowly, week by week, month by month, the human company was winning. And the Thornids did not even understand why. Guerrilla tactics. Just like the historian said above, the lecture was winding down. In summary, Vecca was saying, humans develop many clever strategies for warfare. But these strategies are no longer relevant. Modern galactic society has moved beyond such primitive competition. Resources are shared. Conflicts are resolved through diplomacy. The old human ways of fighting are interesting from a historical perspective, but they have no practical application today. There was a murmur of agreement from the alien delegates. Jinu shook his head slowly. The aliens really believed this. They really thought that competition and conflict were things of the past. They did not see the daily battles that happened all around them. The fights for contracts, the struggles for influence, the constant maneuvering for advantage. They did not see it because they were not looking for it. And they were not looking for it because they thought it did not exist. You picked up his wrench and looked at it. It was a simple tool, metal, heavy, useful for tightening bolts and loosening nuts. His grandfather had once told him that a wrench could also be a weapon if you needed it to be. But more importantly, his grandfather had told him that the best weapon was the one your enemy did not know you had. The aliens did not know that humans still fought. They did not know that every tactic from their history books was still being used every single day. They thought they were studying extinct behavior. They were actually studying the human playbook, and the humans were not about to correct them. Jinu finished his repair work, packed up his tools, and crawled toward the exit. As he moved through the darkness, he found himself humming an old song his grandmother used to sing. Above him, the council meeting was ending. The delegates were leaving their seats. Ambassador Yuna was shaking hands with Vecca, thanking him for the interesting lecture. None of them knew that a human plumber had heard everything. None of them knew that the lecture had reminded Jinu of at least 6 tactics he could use in his work. None of them knew that the ancient battle strategies they discussed as museum pieces were still very much alive. And Jinu planned to keep it that way. The Galactic Archive Station floated in the darkness between 3 star systems. It was old, very old. Some said it was built before humans learned to make fire. Others said it was even older than that. The station was a place of learning, a place where species from across the galaxy came to share knowledge and study history. On this particular day, the Great Council chamber was full. 12 alien delegates sat in a large circle. Their chairs were made to fit their different body shapes. Some were tall and thin. Some were short and wide. Some had no legs at all and floated in special containers filled with liquid. Ambassador Yuna sat in the human seat. She was 34 years old, with short black hair and calm eyes. She wore the standard gray uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. A small pin on her chest showed the flag of the United Earth government. She had been an ambassador for 7 years now. She had seen many strange things. She had met many strange beings. But she never got tired of these history lectures. At the center of the circle stood Veka. Veka was a thornid, an insectoid species from a planet called Thornax Prime. He stood nearly 3 meters tall on 6 legs. His body was covered in hard, shiny plates the color of dark copper. He had 4 arms, each ending in 3 delicate fingers. His head was triangular, with large compound eyes that seemed to see everything at once. Veka was the station's chief historian. He had studied the histories of over 200 species. Today, he was teaching about Earth. "Let us continue," Veka said. His voice was clicking and buzzing, but the translator devices made his words clear to everyone. "Today we examine the military history of the human species." A holographic projector in the floor came to life. Blue light filled the center of the chamber. Images began to form. Ancient humans in leather armor, wooden shields, bronze swords. "Humans are a young species," Veka explained. "They have only been traveling among the stars for 200 of their years. But their history of warfare is surprisingly long and detailed." The hologram changed. It showed a battlefield from thousands of years ago. Tiny human figures moved across the terrain. Arrows flew through the air. Cavalry charged on 4-legged animals called horses. "This is what humans call the Battle of Canny," Veka said. "It took place approximately 2,200 years before humans achieved space travel." Yuna leaned forward slightly. She knew this battle. Every human child learned about it in school. A brilliant general named Hannibal had defeated a much larger Roman army. It was considered one of the greatest military victories in human history. "Observe the tactics," Veka continued. The hologram zoomed in. Lines and arrows appeared, showing troop movements. The human commander positioned his weakest forces in the center. When the enemy attacked, this center retreated slowly, drawing the enemy forward. Meanwhile, stronger forces on the sides moved inward. The enemy was surrounded on 3 sides. They could not escape. They were destroyed. The alien delegates watched with interest. Some took notes on their personal devices. Others simply observed. "This is called a double envelopment," Veka explained. "Or, in simple terms, a pincer movement." It was a common tactic among early humans. A delegate from the Mallory species raised a tentacle. The Mallory were soft-bodied creatures that looked like large purple jellyfish. They communicated through color changes in their skin. Question. The translator device spoke for the Mallory. "These tactics seem effective. Do humans still use them?" Veka made a sound that might have been laughter. No. These are primitive strategies from a primitive time. Humans have evolved beyond such methods. Modern human society is peaceful. They have joined the galactic community. They trade. They build. They explore. The days of such barbaric warfare are long behind them. Yuna kept her face neutral. She did not smile. She did not frown. But inside, she felt a small spark of amusement. Another delegate spoke up. This one was from the krill species. The krill were tall and gray, with long necks and small heads. They were known for their intelligence and their lack of humor. "It is good that humans have abandoned these ways," the Krill delegate said. "Violence is the tool of the primitive mind. A truly advanced species solves problems through logic and cooperation." Several other delegates made sounds of agreement. The Mallory flashed green, which meant approval. A small furry creature from a species called the Binari nodded its head rapidly. Una remained silent. She had learned long ago that sometimes silence was the best response. The lecture continued. Vecca showed more battles. He showed the siege of Troy. He showed the strategies of Alexander the Great. He showed the naval tactics of ancient admirals. He showed the trench warfare of the world wars. He showed the guerrilla tactics of smaller conflicts. Through it all, the alien delegates watched with a mixture of fascination and horror. To them, humans were like children who had played with dangerous toys. It was amazing that they had survived long enough to reach the stars. "Notice this pattern," Vecca said, pointing at a new hologram. It showed humans hiding in buildings, waiting to ambush an enemy force. Humans call this an ambush. They would hide their true numbers and position. When the enemy passed, they would attack from hidden locations. It was deceptive. It was sneaky. It was, in their own words, unfair. The Krill delegate made a disgusted sound. "How uncivilized." "Indeed," Vecca agreed. "But we must remember that humans were isolated on their planet for most of their history. They had no contact with other species. They had only themselves to fight. It is natural that they developed such methods." The hologram faded. Vecca folded two of his arms behind his back. "In conclusion," he said, "human military history teaches us an important lesson. When a species is trapped on a single world with limited resources, conflict is inevitable. Humans fought each other for land, for water, for food, for ideas. They became very good at fighting. But now that they have joined the galactic community, these skills are no longer needed. They have become museum pieces, historical curiosities. Nothing more." Una nodded politely. She did not correct the historian. She did not mention that Earth still had militaries. She did not mention that humans still competed fiercely in business, in politics, in sports. She did not mention that every tactic Vecca had shown was still taught in human schools and universities. She simply sat and listened, and smiled her diplomatic smile. Somewhere below this council chamber floor, in the maintenance tunnels that ran throughout the station, a human plumber named Genu was also listening. He had been fixing a broken pipe when the lecture started. The sound carried clearly through the metal grating above his head. He wiped sweat from his forehead and grinned. "Museum pieces?" he muttered to himself. "Sure, whatever you say." He picked up his wrench and went back to work. But he kept listening, and he kept grinning. The aliens had no idea.